Hi everyone, it's Alan Lepofsky here from Constellation Research. I'm here at Microsoft Build 2017 in a actually very surprisingly sunny Seattle, Washington. We've just finished the day one keynote where they focused on the Azure platform, artificial intelligence, Microsoft Teams, and a whole bunch of other things. Day two is going to focus more on the Windows platform and Surface and Microsoft HoloLens, etc. But let's do a quick recap of the things that we heard about today. What I think the key points are with respect to my coverage area, which is personal productivity and team collaboration. Okay, so the main theme of Microsoft Build is around developer opportunity. This is a developer conference talking to them about applications they can build, how they can extend the Office portfolio, how they can use the Azure platform, how they can build things on Windows, etc. I'm going to focus on the collaboration and productivity aspects. My colleagues are covering things like infrastructure and data and analytics and others in their reviews. But let's sort of get into the team collaboration and personal productivity side. I'm going to focus on four main areas: Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Graph, AI or artificial intelligence, and mixed reality, virtual reality and augmented reality, which Microsoft refers to as mixed reality. So let's start with Microsoft Teams. This is their new product. Released earlier this year, first introduced towards the end of last year, but officially released earlier this year in March, I believe. And it's a team messaging group messaging application. They already say they've got over 50,000 customers currently deployed in 180 plus markets in almost 20 different languages. The strength of Microsoft Teams is that it integrates together a whole bunch of different components of the Office 365 portfolio. You don't just have conversations, you also have files, you have OneNote, you have Planner, you have Skype for video and audio. So it really brings together a diverse set of components of the Microsoft platform, of the Office 365 platform. From a developer standpoint, they already have over 150 integrations with big name companies like Adobe and SAP and DocuSign. They have project management, task management companies, contact management, all bunch of different things already pre-built that you can integrate. Plus they have incredible documentation for people to build their own. Now, there's a whole bunch of different areas where you can extend Microsoft Teams. We're going to review all of these, but it's tabs and bots and connectors have been available since launch, and at Microsoft Build, they announced things like actionable messages, compose extensions, and the new Office Store. So let me cover each of these things. Just a moment ago, I mentioned sort of the developer documentation. Speaking to people in the developer community, people have been very impressed with what's documented, example codes, code snippets, all sorts of things that you can get. So if you're a Microsoft developer, check out the Developer Network and the Microsoft Teams documentation. Okay, so let's dive into all those extension areas that I mentioned, the first of which are tabs. So the main sort of body of a Microsoft team is the activity stream where the conversations are going. But along the top of that stream, you can actually divide it up into multiple tabs. So you can go from the activity stream over to OneNote Notebook, over to a Power BI dashboard, over to a Microsoft Planner, task management system, etc. And what you're seeing here is that these are all the different tabs that are available today to add. Well, not all of them. The screen is scrollable. If it was a live screen, this is just a screenshot of my instance, but you can see that there's been a whole bunch of different tabs that you can add. Now, developers can add their own. The second component is connectors. So connectors are back in that activity stream, but it's the ability to pipe information from outside third-party systems into those channels. So you can get CRM records, you can get customer support tickets, you can get task management sort of showing up. So this allows you to stay inside the activity stream without losing the context of what you're doing, but be able to interact with other tools. The third way that you can extend Microsoft Teams is with bots now. So bots are interactive channels that you can communicate with. You can type in questions. They can respond back to you. You can, they can give you information, etc. So you can see things here like, kayak for travel. You could type in airline numbers. The bot will respond back to you. And I'll show you some more examples of that. So those were the 3 that have been available since launch: tabs, connectors, and bots. Here's actually a great example of some of that extensibility that I mentioned. This is a zoom in from a video of one of their business partners, Tact. And you can see sort of at the top of the screen here, search Office 365 for Julia Spears. The Tact bot has gone back and returned the set of results. Now, what's interesting about this example is it brings together a whole bunch of different things. It not only brings together a bot, it brings together artificial intelligence, which I haven't gotten into yet, but you can see down here the content sentiment. So it does sentiment analysis. It's saying that it found 10 references, 6 in chat, 2 files, 1 note, 1 meeting, but it's doing this sentiment analysis. It's also creating actionable buttons here. So right from here, you can search LinkedIn or take a look at the Microsoft team that's related to this, or look at the team view of this. I'm going to explain what those actionable buttons are in just another moment. But so this was an example of a very interactive bot that takes advantage of a whole bunch of different features. I mentioned these actionable messages. This is an example from one of Microsoft's business partners, Safo, where you can ask the Safo bot a question. So you can go in and ask it the status of an account, for example, or a product, or in the supply chain of SAP, and it can bring back contact information, contract information, supply chain information. So you can see here that it says Paul Johnson's agreed to this $8,500 contract at a 15% discount. And there's buttons directly here, so I don't have to leave the context of what I'm doing: approve, reject, or see more. And part of this Microsoft Build announcement is that the ability to create these bots and these actionable messages is now available in developer preview for developers to look at. So take a look at the code for that. Perhaps one of the most interesting things that they made available is this new idea of compose extensions. So when you're in the activity stream, there's a little box, sort of like, any social network, Facebook or Twitter or whatever you're doing, where you can type in a message and then start to have a conversation. You can add files. You can see here in the bottom that you can add emoji or animated GIFs or start a video. Well, what Microsoft is now doing is they're letting you add your own elements that you can put directly into that compose box. So you can do things like searching knowledge bases and finding information and directly add links and contents to things. Here's a little bit of a blurry sample, my apologies, but you can see here that you could directly add Visual Studio Code. You could put Wikipedia articles, YouTube videos, all sorts of different things. So whatever your company wants to produce, whatever application you have, if you have a poll that you want, if you want to insert the lunch menu, whatever it happens to be that you want to insert, you can actually create that as a content type that people can start to insert. So these are called compose extensions. Now, the final part of what they were doing around Microsoft Teams is developers now can create a team, build all those components that I just mentioned, bots and tabs and connectors and compose extensions. You could create an entire application, something like, a marketing campaign automation, a product launch, anything you want to create, and package that entire thing up. And soon you're going to be able to create that as an application and actually add it to the Microsoft Store. So you're seeing here App Source. At the moment, the screenshot is showing available things for Microsoft Office and Outlook, etc. Well, Microsoft Teams is soon to be added to that. And right inside Microsoft Teams, you'll be able to click a button, go directly to the store and say, I want to download this entire application for this use case. So very interesting things that they're building there. Great opportunity for developers and really powerful for end users, the result that they're going to get. All right, moving on to the second big announcement for Build is Microsoft Graph. You can see here, build smarter productivity applications. Those of you that follow my work know that one of my biggest pet peeves, and one of the things I'm trying my best to help fix in this industry, is the lack of context of different applications talking to each other and information talking to each other. Well, that's what Microsoft Graph is about. It's about taking all of the people, all of the content, and all of the actions or the verbs or the things that are taking place between them. So being able to see who you're connected to, what files you're sharing, what emails, what notes you've taken, what tasks you've done, etc. Now, one of the things Microsoft announced is something new called Project Rome, where they're adding not just people and content and tasks and things like that, but they're also adding devices. So you're going to start to be able to have, what type of, object are you in? Are you in a car? Are you in a portable? Are you in a mobile phone? Are you in a tablet, etc.? So they're adding sort of devices to this, and obviously with the ownership of the Microsoft operating system, Windows 10, and their Surface hubs and their Surface books, and all sorts of different devices, that's going to provide a great deal of context and information. Moving on to the third area is artificial intelligence. This is something everyone's sort of talking about these days, the ability to help automate and improve the way people work through getting rid of repetitive tasks and helping people, not have to do mundane work and being able to bring context to things we've never done before. You can see Microsoft divides up their artificial intelligence, what they call their cognitive services, into a few key categories: vision, speech, language, knowledge, and search. So I'm going to take a look at two of the examples that they were working on at Microsoft Build. The first of which is around vision. So taking a look at this custom vision API and the things you're able to do with this. Now, some of the more common things people talk about around the visual aspects of artificial intelligence are things like uploading photos and having them automatically tagged, building product catalogs, knowing who's in images, things like that. Well, Microsoft took it a step further and showed one of the cooler demos that I've seen around vision and artificial intelligence. What they showed is the ability to do this in real time to video streams. What you're seeing here is the ability inside, for example, a hospital wing, to use the closed circuit cameras and be able to identify staff and patients and objects that are inside those hallways, being able to locate a crash cart or a wheelchair, or know if a patient's in the wrong wing, or where the closest doctor is if they need to get to an emergency or things like that. So really cool use case of that, image recognition. Similarly, they showed doing the same thing on a construction site. So knowing what equipment is there and which people have access to use them. This is great for safety regulations, or helping productivity time, or finding expertise, or people that are able to operate machinery, or knowing when accidents may occur, and all sorts of really interesting things. So some great stuff in the image or vision section of cognitive services. The second thing they talked about was in the language side of things. They showed off a lot of really cool things around Microsoft Translator. So let's take a look. One of the first things they showed is the ability to have a conversation in real time and have it translated to multiple languages. So you can see here in the middle, they're speaking in English, and over on the right hand side, this being converted into Chinese. And so this is sort of getting us really towards that, sci-fi realm of the universal translator, people being able to speak in real time and have conversations with people who they don't have language in common with. A really cool instantiation of this, or manifestation of this, was the ability to add it to Microsoft PowerPoint, where a presenter will be able to say, when I'm presenting, I'd like subtitles, floating beneath the window or docked beside the window, that are showing the language that I'm speaking and what language I'd like the subtitles sort of created into. So I thought this was really cool. Microsoft sort of showing off how they're improving Microsoft Office and the things they're capable of doing in this space using cognitive services. Okay, let's move on to some of the things that they were showing around, not specifically the Office world, but more sort of even in the Windows family of products. So one of the things they announced was around OneDrive and what they're calling OneDrive Files on Demand. Now, what this is your Windows 10 computer will be able to link to your personal or business OneDrive accounts, or your SharePoint team libraries, and map all of the files that are in those to make them look like they're part of your computer, your laptop's operating system, yet they won't take up any room on your hard drive. So you can see in this screenshot, they're saying, there's 1.4 terabytes of information in this folder, but on your hard drive, there's none. And so when you navigate through the files, you click on them and it'll stream down the files that you need. Now, this includes opening them in Microsoft applications like Word and PowerPoint and Excel, or saving them to those locations. Now, this sort of streaming or zero space hard drive is something lots of the enterprise file sharing vendors are talking about. Box and Dropbox and Google announced the same type of thing. So this is, sort of really important. I think Microsoft pointed out that it was the #1 requested feature on their user forums. And I think that is because, from a competitive standpoint, this is sort of starting to become table stakes. All the vendors are working out the ways to have these sort of streaming real-time access to lots of files. Moving on to HoloLens and mixed reality. For those of you that have seen my work on HoloLens before, this is the augmented reality headset. This is Microsoft's sort of top of the line. This is like a $3,000 device. You put on a HoloLens. It's completely untethered, which means it's a computer of its own. So all of the processing power, all of the visuals, all the sensors, all the tracking, all the cameras, the microphones, everything is built into this. You're basically wearing a computer on your head. And there's been great sort of business use cases around this. Things like education and training and architecture and engineering. Well, they continued that. They showed some great new examples of things like in this screenshot, it's the Cirque du Soleil. As a Canadian, I'm thrilled to see this as an example, but they were showing how Cirque du Soleil can build the sets for their new shows in augmented reality. They can see live on the real stage which pieces they're adding and how that would interact with the performers, etc. So some really neat use cases. They had others at the show around things like building stairwells or the moving chairs inside stairwells in houses, being able to look at them through augmented reality and find out how they'd fit. Training around transportation devices and engines and manufacturing. Lots of really, really cool examples around things people are doing with HoloLens. So this is not just sort of fictitious or science fiction anymore. This is really becoming reality, the ability to use these things. Now, Microsoft introduced something new at the show where I mentioned HoloLens is sort of their top of the line. I think it's like a $3,000 device. Well, they announced way down lower end of the spectrum, around $300 or $400 devices, these new virtual reality headsets, where the HoloLens is augmented reality, where you can sort of see the real world with holograms on top of it. These devices are more virtual reality, so your eyesight is blocked. You're only seeing what's on the screens. But these are, by Acer and HP, the two of the first ones. You'll need the difference here, and the reason the price point is more around the $300 or $400, is these devices are tethered to a computer. So the computer isn't built into the headsets. Instead, in this case, you'd have some limited mobility because you're actually tethered, meaning a wire goes from the headset to your computer. But I did some really cool examples of this. I went through what they were calling their mixed reality immersive experience. I went into this, here you can see me wearing my Acer headset, and the example that I did was building wind farms and looking around at a 3D view of a map of the Seattle area and deciding where to place wind farms. So really neat stuff. Again, this is what Microsoft is doing in what they call mixed reality. So that's sort of the combination of augmented and virtual reality. They also introduced for Windows something really interesting called Windows Story Remix. What this is a very fun, ability to get pictures and audio and video, put them together, add titles, add animations, even add 3D animations from a catalog of 3D animations that the community is building and sharing with each other. It's really, they showed great examples of businesses sort of producing promo trailers, students doing homework assignments together, all sorts of really neat things that you can produce and share. Now, I'm certainly interested where this is going to go from a creativity standpoint in Office 365, more for the business world. You have PowerPoint already, you have Word already, you have OneNote. They have Microsoft Sway, if you're familiar with that, sort of a more web-like storytelling version of PowerPoint. Well, I'm really interested where we're going to see Windows Story Remix go. When are you going to be able to integrate information from PowerPoint and Excel and Word and Power BI and start to create more compelling, business-like presentations from this? So that's not something that, they spoke about at Build. This is me speculating, but again, the introduction of Windows Story Remix, I think, is really exciting. It's sort of competitive almost into that Adobe sort of creative world with some of the tools that they can do. Now, I'm going to end with, one of the demos that they did that I really liked, and it's Satya and his demo team at Day One. We're talking about intelligent meetings. And this is near and dear to my heart because I have to say, for many, many years, here's, July 2015, so 2 years ago, but, long even before this, I've been talking about how the before, during, and meeting experience is really ripe for improvement. And Microsoft started showing some of that, which is really, really exciting. So what they had here is, you wake up, you're speaking to your Cortana computer at your house, and you say, look, I got to get in the car and I got to get to the office. Cortana knows the context of your calendar and your location. It connects you, through Skype directly to that meeting while you're in transit. It sort of integrates with Microsoft Teams, so the people that are, at the office can have communication with you. Over on the right-hand side, you can see conversations sort of taking place, bots embedded, all sorts of things that kind of bring together multiple modes of having these conversations, including things at the end like, bringing all of this package together and giving a review of a meeting, sending that out to people in Outlook. And over on the right-hand side, seeing things like, Microsoft Cognitive Services doing voice translation and a transcript of the entire meeting, being able to filter it by speakers, by keywords, being able to find when assignments were made, and clicking, at different meetings and going to different parts of the transcript. And so, again, this isn't something that's shipping today. This is a concept that they were showing, but, I have a lot more to say about this. As I said, I kind of like to talk about the pre-meeting, which is, when you're planning and creating the agendas and who you're inviting. During meeting, like how you capture what's happening. Post-meeting, doing the follow-ups, this experience and new devices and autonomous cars and work from home and work from other places. Really, really interesting stuff. All right, one last thing I just want to quickly say. It's not really part of the show of the future of work, but it was just one of the most memorable moments of Build. They talked about something called Project Emma, and what it was is where one of the Microsoft researchers worked with this woman, Emma, who has Parkinson's, and you can see in the top right corner how hard it is for her, even in her early 20s, very early case of Parkinson's, which is unfortunate, but the ability to draw, the ability to shaky hand and not be able to write her name or be an artist anymore. And the developer worked with this watch that actually sort of interrupts the signals going to their hand to sort of counteract what's going on with the Parkinson's. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see her drawing a perfect square, a perfect rectangle. Again, it was a wonderful story. I encourage you to go to YouTube and Google Microsoft Project Emma, because it's just 2 or 3 minutes of a wonderful, wonderful story. So I apologize. Thank you for indulging me. That wasn't a future of work story, but it was something great from the Microsoft event. All right, so let's recap really quickly. I think, Build has a huge amount of information for developers. I mentioned earlier, I'm not even touching here on Azure and data and analytics and server farms and, all of the things that my colleagues were covering at the event. But for me, personal productivity and team collaboration, a lot of things happening around Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Graph to connect people and content and now devices as well. Artificial intelligence, most important thing going forward for all of your applications, building better Office applications, looking at, vision and translation services, doing things like workplace safety, those examples I showed, really cool. And then the reality of mixed reality, pun intended, I guess there, really starting to come to work. We're really going to start to see business use cases for, data visualization, looking at blueprints and graphics and training aids and all sorts of different ways that we can visualize information through mixed reality, which is either augmented reality, the real world with data layered on top of it, or virtual reality, sort of a blocked off fictitious version of the world. So lots of great stuff at Microsoft Build. I hope this has given you a quick overview of what was taking place at the event, and there you go. Okay, so I just want to say a quick thank you to Microsoft for having me here at Microsoft Build 2017. Believe it or not, Seattle, and an incredibly sunny day, which certainly makes it hard to stay inside for sessions, but great stuff coming out of Microsoft Build, lots of things around cognitive services, artificial intelligence, Microsoft Graph, all of these things, virtual reality or mixed reality, all of these things that are going to impact the future of work. This is Alan Lepofsky from Constellation Research, and I'll speak to you later. Thanks. Bye.